make it, do it, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger, work it harder, make it.
Jesse, you are in that area where I said there was a tornado watch. That's in effect until 1 a.m. this morning Eastern time. We heard a little bit earlier from Jerry Demings, who is the mayor of Orange County, Florida. Orlando is the county seat of Orange County, talking about some of the preparations for people ahead of what you just described with Ian getting closer, with people already beginning to take shelter in some of the public shelters, including special needs shelters. Talk a little bit more, Jesse, about how Orlando and the area where you are has been getting ready for Ian and how ready they feel that they are.
Yeah, so there are multiple shelters open here in Orange County, Florida, which is home to Orlando. By the way, you're asking about where we are exactly. We're pretty near the Orlando airport, and we're really not that far. I'd say within half an hour of all the theme parks that everyone knows at home. Obviously, those theme parks are shut down right now, and some of the people we've met have been tourists who have had their vacations put on a very serious pause right now. On the shelter front, there have been multiple shelters open in Orange County. We know that at least one of them here, as of late afternoon, early evening, was at capacity. 2 more shelters were opened up. We saw one shelter that had a good number of people at it. We've seen others that were much quieter, but obviously that was earlier in the day. And I think as the day goes on, as the threat grows larger and people see what's happening, I think some people might be second guessing their thoughts. We met a man who you talked about tornado threats there, Joshua, hours ago. A man told me he brought his days-old baby boy, his young daughter, his wife, and other family members all came to a shelter because of the tornado threat and other possible risks that they were not willing to take. Because above all, right, save your lives. You can replace property. It could take years, obviously. It comes at a great cost. But you can't replace life. And I think that's something, right, that we cannot stress enough. And so officials had hoped people would seek shelter, especially people living in mobile homes. So that was a push being made by officials. And this is probably right now, Joshua, one of the strongest wind gusts that we felt here in recent hours. And again, all of this is going on hours before the worst of Ian is expected here. And you talk about tornado threat here in the Orlando area. We have already seen nearly a dozen potential tornadoes touch down throughout Florida in areas outside of Ian's direct path. And that should underscore the severity of this storm. If you're and some communication issues, I'm sure, as well. I think it's going to be hours, if not days, before we get a full scope of the devastation. But what we're seeing right now should give you an idea of this is the appetizer, if you will. This is just the beginning, and this is after the storm is likely going to have weakened from what we saw when it made landfall.
Yeah, Jesse, since you mentioned where you are, just a little bit more context. If he's near the Orlando International Airport, that would put him east of some of the big theme parks in Orlando. So if you make your way west from where he is, you run into the area where you hit the Universal Orlando Resort, and further down SeaWorld, and further down I-4 Walt Disney World Resort, and then in the other direction, Daytona Beach, which is part of the state that's also getting ready for Ian. So all of those are factors. And then all the people staying in hotels with Jesse and around him, vacationers, some of them maybe emergency workers, linemen who are waiting for the storm to blow through, hoping that things kind of work out as smoothly as possible. And then a lot of the east-west highways that take you from the coast to the tourist areas and back are still passable and are still usable for the recovery effort. Jesse, I know I got to let you go in just a second. We're kind of trying to keep making our way around the state, but have you heard from anybody who is looking what the next stage is, thinking about how they're going to do their recovery, business owners, residents who are kind of thinking about the next step in all of this? Or is everyone just kind of focused on getting warm and dry and away from the storm?
Well, you know, one of the people we spoke with mentioned that father who had brought his wife and children late afternoon to the shelter. They have a 3rd floor apartment, he said, and I asked him if they boarded it up or anything like that. And they just got out. I think at this point, people are still in the get somewhere safe phase. And at this point, hopefully everyone has done that already because, you know, the winds are picking up, the rain is getting heavier, and it's dark now. So that just adds a layer of treachery to what people are having to navigate right now in the Orlando area. And you mentioned I-4, that's a main thoroughfare between Orlando here and Tampa to the west. That roadway, which we were on earlier, there were lights flashing overhead saying that by order of the governor, tolls were down. So they want people to move quickly, and they're encouraging people to move through that to get out of the storm's way. Ian is going to win, right? I think that's the simple truth here.
Right.
That Ian will win if you try to duel with Ian. So get somewhere safe. I think the other thing we talk about a lot is higher ground. Here it's more about flooding. It's not about storm surge so much as the flooding impact, and that can be unpredictable. But obviously there are some people who are going to, still potentially be trying to hunker down in lower lying areas. And the hope is that they are at minimum vigilant and really hope they can get out of the way.
Yeah, well, it seems like at least some of the folks, again, we've got that view of Interstate 4 to the left from WESH, people staying off the roads in at least parts of Central Florida. I do want to note, though, for those of you who are watching, since some of you may be watching from Central Florida or may have loved ones in that area who are thinking about what they're going to do when Ian comes that way, there are, as we mentioned, the Orange County Mayor, Jerry Demings, held a press conference this evening, said there are shelters available in the area. It's not quite too late to get moving. It will be soon. But if they want to move, there might still be a little bit more time to get to shelters. So loved ones in the area can go to Apopka High School, Timber Creek, McCoy, Dr. Phillips, a major high school in the area not far from Universal, and Memorial Middle School. 2 more shelters just opened at Timber Springs Middle and Southwest Middle School. So far, last we heard from the county mayor, there are about 1,100 people in the shelters, but there is significant capacity to house more people. And part of what we've heard from other parts of the state of Florida, from further southwest of where Jesse is that some people have seen the water rise way up past their front doors. I mean, we saw the fire station in Naples get flooded. That's how much water we're talking about. So if you have loved ones who are closer to Orlando than Tampa or closer to Daytona, for sure, closer up to, say, St. Johns County, parts of Volusia County who are still trying to evacuate, there appears to still be time to do that, especially since the National Weather Service has that area, and forgive me, I'm just pulling up the list, has an area in parts of the Treasure Coast in Central Florida where Jesse is that are under a tornado watch until 1 a.m. this morning, including Osceola, Orange, Volusia, Okeechobee, Seminole, Brevard, Indian River, Martin, and St. Lucie counties. They're in that part of the storm that tends to spin off tornadoes. We saw several tornadoes yesterday. Thankfully, haven't seen any in the last day or so, but that could change very quickly. Jesse Kirsch, I don't know if you're still with us from Orlando. I think you're still with us, connected out in the storm.
Yep, yeah. Yep, and I'll just add this for this final point, Joshua. We talk about the flash flooding. It's exactly that. It comes in a flash. And I can tell you from covering different flooding in another state in recent months that I can't tell you how many times we hear from people that they looked outside and by the time, they might have had a chance to go, it kept rising. The time to move, if you're going to move out of the way of flooding, it is not as you see it developing. It's when we're telling you it's coming. But that said, obviously, conditions are deteriorating here rapidly, and certainly when it gets dark, it gets more dangerous. But I just wanted to emphasize that point about flash flooding, that, it can go from terrible to impossible in moments from what we've heard from survivors of flooding in other situations.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be fooled, for those who are watching this and thinking, well, he's inland. He's not near the coast. Flash